Okay, welcome everyone. I'm sure others will be joining as we go along. Go ahead and put your information in the chat unless you want to jump in. We can do some quick introductions. I'm Julie. I'm located over in Kitsap County. I own a center, and I'm one of the co-chairs of this committee. I want to remind everyone of our to be mindful of the community agreements, which there's our community agreements, yay. And our limited time together. We've got a short meeting today. We had we just we're not able to get all of the presenters for the different topics, so we shortened the meeting today. So let's see. Oh, and we're gonna have a translator today, which is excellent news. Elizabeth Belskus Amador is here today. If we have Spanish speaking providers, which we often do, so that's wonderful. Please share your name, where you're located, your role, meaning are you a committee member here, are you public, and also are you a center or a family home? We'd love to know. Katie, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I was just about to unmute myself. I was printing, so I didn't want to have that in the background. Good morning. I'm Katie Hudkins. I'm co-chair with Julie, and I own a center in Bremerton. And I'm excited today that we have a translator. I think that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so Eric just put his stuff in the chat, and Eric's been with us. How long have you been with us now, Eric? It feels like a long time, but
yeah, it does, doesn't it? It has actually been a little over a year on the CE team, yeah.
Okay, and this is Eric's last meeting. He's moving on to another role outside of the department. Is that right?
Yes, outside of DCYF, but still with the state of Washington. I'm taking a position with the Washington State Senate, so I'll be.
So, okay, externally we can be happy for you.
Yeah, you'll all see me again.
We can be really. We can be sad and disappointed privately.
Yeah.
You've been a big part of this and a real help for, especially with the temporary licensing committee and the recommendation list and getting all of, being really involved in that. So
yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah,
we will miss you, but good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so I know that things were distributed, but we can also share on the screen. I think we've got a copy of the last meeting minutes if you guys want to just scroll through that real quick. Oh, it's nice to see everyone's faces. We also have the feedback loop, which would be great to be able to see if there's anything from the feedback loop that sticks out from our last meeting. Okay, in the chat. Feedback loop. Okay, so if you guys see it in the chat, you can click on that. There were some really important things I think we talked about last time, and it's really kind of a shame that we weren't able to get someone to come and talk about clarification, I would say, or more answers with some of those things. A lot of folks weighed in about how long it takes to hear back from their licensor when they're having even really urgent problems. And it was also mentioned, of course, that when there's a request from us, from the provider, there's a very limited time frame that we have to respond by. So it can be frustrating when we don't hear back, even on really urgent matters. Some folks have great, have great licensors and they really hear quickly, but there are some that really do struggle with that. And we definitely heard about that on our last meeting. Okay, we touched on the CPS investigation. That is a topic that we have been trying to bring on a very regular basis. What providers can expect versus expect from investigators, whether they are licensing division CPS or regular CPS, and the difference between what is required versus what is requested. Because even when things are requested, they are framed in a way that sounds required. So that's something that we're still working on getting presenters for a future meeting. And yeah, it's been a little frustrating, that journey, but were you able to put the feedback on the screen, or maybe we don't have time for that? Eric, what's the deal with that?
On having the document up on the screen?
Is that a Jessica thing?
No, actually, if you have it open, you're able to share your screen there. I know we've done that a couple times.
Well, that's nice. I hadn't.
Yeah, right down at the bottom of your Zoom, there should be like a green, yeah. And then you can kind of take the controls and go at your own pace. And then Julie, while you get comfortable with that, Lizette, our interpreter, has a question in chat, and she is asking how she can provide her services, and if we would only like the provider, if the provider has questions, or if she is interpreting for all speakers. So I thought maybe this would be a good time to maybe try to get some of those ground rules laid out a little more clearly for her, so that we are
Yeah, I
Spanish
think it would
speaking.
be great if we could identify if there are folks that need translation services. It may not be true on every meeting, but and when I'm screen sharing, Katie, I cannot see that stuff. So maybe you can take a look and see if there's any raised hands or anyone that needs translation. This is new for us to be offering this during the meeting, and we're really excited to have this. But we also don't want to translate the entire meeting and double the time, or essentially cut in time, our time in half, because everything's being live translated.
Yeah.
So we want to figure out a way to best support those that need translation services.
Hey, Julie, can I jump in?
Yeah,
If-
absolutely.
So if people would like the entire meeting translated, they'll have the option to click on the globe icon on their Zoom, and they would be able to mute the original audio and only hear the translator translating.
Okay.
Or it could be about 80% the translator volume, 20% the original volume, depending on their preference. And then if someone has a question, they can, raise their hand, and then the translator can translate it for the group, for the presenters.
Do
So
we,
I really-
can we have maybe like a raise of hands of what providers are going to take advantage of the translator today? Just so we know who's here that would appreciate the translator. Okay, there's one.
Yeah, I wasn't able to see who was speaking and explaining before, but if you could run through that again, I'd love to hear it again. How to best support Jacqueline and Genesis, and if there's others.
Thank you.
So Lizette, if you could please let the participants know if they want to click on the globe icon. It says interpretation, and then they can select hearing the meeting in Spanish.
Okay, so I mean, that's pretty
Ya lo
cool.
seleccioné, gracias.
How does Lizette support them beyond that?
Sí, lo seleccioné, pero no, dice que está desactivado. Sí,
Yo
sí
la
te
escucho.
Sí,
Where are we at? Lizette, can you let us know?
ok.
This is new, so everybody just patience while we figure this out. This is our first meeting, so with the translator.
Okay, it looks like it's working, so we can continue.
Okay. Okay, so all right. So did everybody have a chance to look at the feedback? Were there any questions from feedback about the last meeting? Okay, so the TLS tracker
Sí.
is on. Oh, who spoke up? Okay, Eric, were you going to walk us through the TLS tracker? It is on here, and I know that there was some discussion about not doing it, but it's still on our agenda. So were you going to run through a little bit of it?
Well, we didn't have a formal intent to run through it. We provided the written update, which captured most of what went on in the last few meetings, and then a few updates that we've been able to make with licensing on there. So there are a number of items that are on there. What I can share is that the TLS tracker itself and the process is going to be improved. And right now, licensing and early learning and community engagement are all working together to find a more useful tool for this particular process, to just simply make sure that your concerns of, all these recommendations, you just want to make sure they don't fall through, right? You just want to make sure that there is an answer, or if this is that, what does it become? And I know some of the improvements that they're looking at making will look at doing that. So it's a little more efficient, it's a little more effective for when the tracker is actually here in with the subcommittee. And I think maybe the timeliness of it too is something that they're working on. So for all intent and purposes of where we're at this moment, the document itself as a written update would definitely suffice. And then I do believe in the next, which I guess would be your December meeting, I would anticipate that there would be an update from that with some of the work that's been going on right now. So how's that for a short answer?
Yeah, that's great. And I know that one of the things we've really made sure to communicate with those that are involved in updating the tracker is the importance of explaining. We can't just have yes or no when there's a recommendation. For instance, one of the recommendations was it's just not going to happen, but it's removing the requirement of having an early achievers rating in order to take subsidy. That's not going to change unless there's a legislative change. So for DCYF or someone to just put no isn't going to stop the questions about it. So they're going to be making sure to put explanations in the tracker to quell some of those questions ahead of time.
Hey everyone, this is Emily Grossman, Deputy Director of CE. I just wanted to flag that Nicole just hopped on. She's in DC right now for work, but made some time to come in and pop into the meeting. So I just wanted to check and see if, Nicole, do you have anything that you want to say about the tracker?
It'd be challenging to unmute on the phone when you're not familiar, when you're not used to it.
Across the nation.
No.
I wouldn't know how to do it myself, so no worries. If you find you can unmute at some point and you have something to say, let us know. Okay.
I really know how to do
there she
this.
is.
Like I somehow got stuck in a different screen. So my apologies. And it sounds like Julie, you were starting to cover this, that we're really trying to go through and put more of the why around things that we believe we cannot do, or things that would need to be changed in order to do that. And then also be more clear about things that might already be happening. to make sure that that is put out there. And then we were walking through and wanting to reorganize a little bit, right? So that it's clear around sort of what is it that we're working on? What are the things that the agency is saying, no, this isn't something we would do, and here's the why. And Julie, I heard really loud and clear that beyond that this is an RCW. So talking about that this is a quality framework that we've adopted. We believe that we want kids who are on subsidy to be in the highest quality settings possible. So that's just an example of something that we would be doing. And then also be looking at, are there some things that maybe we're not yet doing that we could be doing? So we're just trying to regroup and reorganize a little bit on those pieces. And the other thing I would just add is I know that you all have also talked about sort of how can that tracker be maybe a little bit more dynamic. And so it would be great to hear your thoughts about what that could potentially look like as well.
Thanks for chiming in, Nicole.
Julie, I do have an update on the TLS and how it will relate to the ELAC FSKA recommendation report. So during the last ELAC meeting, it was mentioned that we should make sure and assure that some of the recommendations in the TLS recommendation report that would be applicable to the FSKA ELAC recommendation report, that those recommendations are brought over into the ELAC version. So we have reached a draft or two further than the last time many of you saw that. And we have incorporated a few of those items. I myself went in and really tried to vet out the recommendations that I felt would be applicable to that recommendation, to the ELAC report. But I do believe that it may need a little further discussion on, just to make sure that some of those items in the TLS that maybe could be applicable to the FSKA are brought forward. So more to come on that. And I know that the team's working on it, and you'll hear more about that, I think, probably next month.
Okay, well, I think we're actually done with the beginning part of the meeting. I know that we're going to be moving into the first presentation. We might as well, if our presenters are here, and I think they are. Yep.
I thought Karma was here.
Yeah, so is Marlene. We might as well move
she
on.
jumped on. Perfect. All right. Well, we have an update on the new website for providers that is called Develop. And here to explain about that is Karma Hugo and Marlene White. So they've been with us before. And so I'm excited because I just wanted to kick off and let's get going.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Katie. I'll start us off. I'm Karma Hugo. I'm the Learning Management System Coordinator here at DCYF. I've been in this role for about a year, and primarily I am supporting the current learning management system, which people are familiar with, I'm sure, the student training portal trainings that exist with required online trainings. Many of them are asynchronous, and then some of them are facilitated by trainers in a cohort model. So a lot of my work is centered around that, but I'm really pleased to be part of the transition to a new system called Develop, which I am here today to share some updates around together with my colleague Marlene. So I'm going to kick us off on some slides, and then I'll turn it over to Marlene. But if we can go ahead onto the next site. So as Katie mentioned, the site is now called Develop. There was a process undertaken to come up with what we would name this training site, how we would refer to it here in Washington. So what you see here is just an outline of the process that we engaged in to come up with the name Develop. So you can see it started with a survey of ECE professionals, and that first survey, we were trying to elicit from providers a sense of what it is that they do in order to create some seed words, some keywords that would help us name the site in ways that would hopefully be meaningful to the work that people do. And so then in August, we put those names that were comprised of the keywords to public vote. There were nearly 700 responses, and Develop was overwhelmingly the most popular name. And so we are pleased to be again referring to it as Develop. So I'm going to continue on and share a few more things about it. So one of the things I can say is that we have been working diligently on this transition. And we had originally a hopes of launching in 2023, but we have ongoing configuration and IT development that is still occurring, and that has pushed the time frame out for us. And so now we are expecting to launch in 2024, and we'll continue just working through the transition timeline and providing updates on the progress as we go. So just to share a little bit specifically about the main audiences who will be interacting with Develop, childcare providers, family, friends, and neighbors will be going to Develop to find access and complete trainings, required trainings, in-service trainings. Trainers and training orgs will manage and record and create their training events in this new site Develop. And then those who are interested in becoming state approved trainers will apply through the new site. So these are the main things that we will be launching when we launch in 2024. And as we lead toward that launch, we are really continuing to engage with multiple audiences who will be using Develop, but also really prioritizing interacting with trainers and training organizations, since they will really be the ones who need to understand the system to get their training set up in order for then us to launch for folks to find those trainings. And so as we proceed toward that launch, that is really our interaction in supporting trainers and training organizations first, with a set of implementation strategies and phase timeline support that we've been in communication with them about. So this is just a general update, kind of where we are. So certainly more to come as we can share that. But just to share a little bit more, let's move to the next slide, just to continue to build an understanding of what it is that Develop will be doing. So what you see here is just some of the components. We have many different elements of our training system that live in different systems. And so part of the goal and purpose of moving to Develop is to really organize all of those trainings into a more streamlined system. And so what you see here are some of the examples of some of those elements of training that have lived in different systems that when we launch will be brought together into this new system Develop. So for course, currently folks might be using Merit to search for trainings. So that is an element that will no longer, when we go live, folks will go to Develop to search for those trainings. I want to pause here and say, because I know there are a lot of questions about what remains the same. So if folks are going to be, what's changing about Merit. So I just want to underscore that the main change occurring is that folks will be using Develop to search for their trainings. We will still continue to use Merit as we do now. So this is Merit Training Search. It's one of the pieces that will be brought into Develop. Another system that we utilize for training is the online training portal. This is the instructor side of our online training. So if you are teaching online courses, you are needing to use this portal to access your students. You might also be a student, so then you might be accessing the third Rivertown icon there, which is another system our learners are using to actually take the trainings. So if you're a trainer, you're navigating between the online portal and possibly also the student side, the Rivertown LCMS. So these are some 3 systems that we are really interplaying across now that are going to come together. And then that fourth item there, planned enhancements and systems growth. There are some additional things that we're really looking forward to Develop, making possible for us. We're going to be building out and enhancing where our trainers are able to access and utilize their training materials. So there'll be some centralized sort of library repository. There's also an incredible wealth of data that we will be able to produce about our trainings, both from an evaluation of the trainings and the learner experience, but also number of trainings in various languages and so forth. So this is just to help depict overall what it is that Develop will do. And let's move to the next slide. And just quickly, I won't read through all of these, but just why are we moving to a new site? Why is it that we have felt we need to streamline these different training elements into one system? So you can see here, we have been collecting feedback over years that have really led to this, this desire, this need to really bring things together under one system. And I think with that, what I'd like to do is actually turn it over to you, Marlene, and ask you to share with us how we are being informed by users to make develop the best that it can be for our community.
Thanks, Karma. And before I do, there's a question from Julie in the chat box. And I don't know if you want to answer them during the presentation or afterwards. The question is, will we be able to log into Merit and access develop within Merit and vice versa?
No, they will be separate. They will, if you wanted to look at your history of trainings or so forth, that will still reside in Merit and will need to be accessed separately.
Thank you. All right, yeah, so I'm here to talk about UX, and I'm Marlene, and well, I was on the WGQR team, but now I'm actually with the operations team, and I'm sorry, I don't know my new title or anything, but I will be supporting the whole division with the communications and engagement strategy, so I'm very excited. So I'm here to talk about the user experience and what we're going to be doing with childcare providers. UX stands for user experience, so I'm going to just like call it UX throughout. And it's really, we're just trying to learn, it's the experience the user has when they're interacting with a product or a system or a service. And we're going to be gathering feedback from users, and our next set of users are going to be childcare providers and family friend and neighbor providers by conducting user testing. So UX testing, and it's a type of research to gather input. We can move to the next slide. So back in November 2022, which is crazy, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, we sat down with state-approved trainers and we conducted UX testing with them to really hear how they would go about navigating the site. And the area really focused on two specific, the feedback really focused on two specific things. It was around technical, so like the site usage, the technicality of navigating the site. And then the other one was really big on communications and support. And I'm going to just go over some key findings. Oh yeah, there's a comment in the chat box. Everything looks very organized and easier to use. So yeah, so some key findings around the technical usage. Participants said navigating the new training site is fairly easy and seamless. The biggest barrier for Somali and Spanish participants was the language. It was a language barrier because the site was only available in English, but I am excited to say that it will be available in Spanish and Somali. So when we conduct these sessions with childcare providers in Spanish and Somali, the site will be available in these languages. So that's really exciting. So we'll be able to look at more things besides just usage, also language, to do the translations make sense. What do we need to change for them to navigate this easily? And then also around technical, just some quick key findings. Participants express gratitude for certain features on the site, like uploading documents. These are just really technical things. So the search box fields were confusing to some users. All areas on the site that require a user to edit or update, they need more visual indication. So really technical on the side, but overall it was pretty intuitive and easy to use. There was just some little things here and there where someone would ask, well, how do I do this? Or what is this for? On the other one around communications and support, it really came back to the program. So the key findings were around like programmatic, the state-approved training program. Again, the biggest barrier for Somali and Spanish speakers was site language. And then also we heard a need for basic training, program terminology and program basics. So even trainers were like, what are these government terms that you're putting on the webpage? I don't understand them. So that's something we definitely took back to the team, and we're going to be doing a better job at explaining what all these terms mean, because there are a lot of terms in state government. So we just need to do a better job at defining them. There is also a big need around just, creating those communications that are going to support a user to use a new system. So visuals, directions, videos, step-by-step guides, and tutorials. It is pretty intuitive, but there are areas where, it's a brand new site. So with anything, like if you don't play around with it often, you're going to get stuck here and there. So we are going to be creating these support materials to help someone guide them through the process in a seamless manner. And I have all the results if anybody ever wants to see them. Those are totally public and available if anyone ever wants to see them. But yeah, we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So just more on UX testing. So we're going to be conducting them virtual. They are one-on-one interviews, and this allows us to really hear from the user on how they navigate the site on really specific tasks. So they're really task-oriented. We have them do usually what a user does when they're doing something with a site. So we're going to focus on the login. I'm not sure on the tasks yet because we haven't started this yet. Carm, I see you came off mute.
Yeah, we are focusing the tasks that these users will be interacting with on the primary things that they will normally do. Create an account, search for a training, register for a training, take a training. So that we expect will be highly informative to us and give us so much great feedback about potential configuration changes or support materials that we'll need.
Yeah, thank you. And we're going to be, like I said, they haven't started yet, so we're going to be conducting them soon. We are aiming for a total of 12 sessions, the number that you really want to get really good feedback on something. That sweet spot is 8 to 12 users. And then anything beyond that, you are often hearing very similar feedback, and it just gets pretty repetitive. So we're really aiming for 12 users, since we're going to be conducting them in the 3 languages, in English, Spanish, and Somali. And again, on there, you can see a bullet. The system will be available in these languages. So that is really exciting, because we will be able to easily have users navigate it in their own language, and then also hear that feedback on translations. Have we reached out to volunteers for this already? We have, but because I'm about to talk about the timeline, but it is open still, and I have all of the links if you have anyone that is interested in participating. And we are really in need of Somali speakers right now. I want to say only one has expressed interest and has signed up. We have a lot of English and Spanish speakers signed up, but definitely I have the forms here, and I'll provide the links in a second. Actually, let me put them in the chat really quick. So those are the interest forms. It's really easy. I just need your name, contact info. We are really looking for users who find technology difficult. So they're going to be the ones to provide the best feedback. So if you know of someone that's interested in, sitting down with us and providing feedback, we really want to hear from those who find technology difficult or navigating websites difficult. They're going to be the best for that feedback gathering. And like I said, right now we are in need of Somali speakers. So we are going to be doing some targeted outreach to Somali speakers from our language access coordinator, Abdullahi, will be doing direct outreach as well. What else did I want to say? Usability testing sessions are just a great way for us to really hear from our audiences in a one-on-one space, because we just allow them to do their thing freely and gather that feedback on everything that they experience, whether it is positive or negative. And it really helps us learn from that user experience and helps us uncover and identify areas that we may not be aware of before a launch. So for trainers. You know, we got to hear about areas of communications and policy related matters, even functionality and navigation and the design of the system. So it really helps us uncover multiple areas before we launch. Yeah, Julie?
Oh, that was quick. Thanks. So I just want to bring it up again. I know it's been brought up at several times when you guys have attended these meetings, the need for us to be able to access the various sites when we're on one of them. We've got Compass and we've got Merit and we've got the DCYF training, which I think you're replacing, right? So I'm understanding that we won't be able to log into one and access all with that login, but at least if there's a clear link that will lead us there, I think, especially for folks that are challenged with, you know, technology, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so having links within each of those that lead us to the various places would be very helpful. If they could somehow encompass it so one login does all, that'd be even better. So I'm just mentioning it again because I heard a no this time and I'm like, you know, what can you guys do? There's got to be something you can do to ease it up for us and make it a little easier for everyone.
Yeah, I would love to respond to that. I just appreciate what you're saying so much, Julie. I experience it in my daily work life with so many systems. I know we all do. And I think this is definitely feedback that we've heard. And I would say that when we talk about streamlining systems, and the example I gave is clear, it's not streamlined enough. We need to continue to really narrow in on systems and make it as easy as possible. So I'm also learning a lot about the technological interaction between systems. And a lot is really dependent on the type of data that those systems have. And there is also one of the reasons that we are a bit delayed in our rollout is because technology is not just driven by advancements in functionality, but is also driven, unfortunately, in criminal behavior and people attempting to get data and needing to create more and stronger and better protections. And one of the biggest areas is an area around authenticating a user on a site. And so what you're talking about, Julie, which is something we are striving for, is that simplicity of knowing where to go, easily navigating there. Whenever those systems contain data and have users that have an authentication process, there is not only a lot that goes into that at the system level, but here in the state of Washington, we have created new policies that agencies have to adhere to. And this is one of the reasons we have had to spend so much more time in development, is making sure that we are adhering to some of the most stringent authentication processes that there are. So all this just to say that technology is incredible and we feel like it just continues to propel us, but there are also a lot of drawbacks and some of them don't really make sense. Like it seems like, yes, you should be able to do that. I do want to say we are, so where there are presently links that people would be familiar with for searching for trainings, for instance, those will be updated with the new links. So our hope is that people will be able to go to familiar places and be directed where they need to go. But I'm also taking away the suggestion that we can do more in our communications to depict the different systems, how they interact, and make it easy for people to know which system they need to go to for what, and easily do that. So I know it's a lot of explanation, but there's a lot that goes into this.
I would just like to jump in, Karma. I think we're all excited for this. Merit is just a challenge in general for us providers. I mean, and so seeing this new website come out is really exciting. But we're always going to kind of have that drawback to Merit, the word Merit, and then not having that flexibility to go back and forth between the two, the new one and Merit. You know, it's exciting to have all these training opportunities put into one website, and providers will be able to send our staff there. But us providers, still the word merit, it's a challenge. It's a struggle. And I'm on it right now, and it's going to be down for maintenance in like 18 minutes. It's constantly on maintenance. It's constantly a battle for us to get things uploaded and our staff into it. And so I know Julie's coming from that side. I'm coming from that side, as well as many other providers. So as much excitement there is, like, oh, why not just merit? Why can't it be, exciting and redone as well? But
thank you for expressing that. There's so much feedback that we've collected about merit, and some of it we're able to address through this streamlining of training sites, and other things will be addressed and are still being held and attended to around merit. I appreciate you expressing that. And I also noticed Jared has his hand raised, and I'm gonna go off mute, but I'm here available.
Yeah, Jared, go ahead. What's your question?
Yeah, I guess there were two more like comments, but one is that, like, just a suggestion, I guess, if the two aren't going to be like a single portal, then one of the places that I think might be really important to link them is when people log into their merit, it has the list of all the qualifications that they need, and they'll be highlighted like green or red, based on like if you've completed them. And so having like those trainings that are in this other portal like grouped, and then if you click on them, for not having them done, having like a little bit information about like these trainings are taken through our new developed website, and like here's the link, and just really being like clear about like these are trainings that you get from the state on a different website, and like here's that website, and directions on you'll need to create it, or like a little something that like really clearly when you log into Merit, it says like these are the ones that you get kind of in-house. I think that would be really an important place to link them. And then the second piece is something that is related to like the content that's in develop that you can take or leave, but not having like an internal state approved 30-hour STARS training that's online seems like such a miss. That is such a slam dunk for saving thousands upon thousands of dollars for all of the providers, to be able to just access a 30 hours training that's approved and created by the state that's on there. And it's like, obviously the goal is that it would be free and it would save anybody a ton of money. Even if it wasn't, you could easily undercut the other offerings and it would be making money for like the state. That just has felt to me for a long time like just a huge missed opportunity, as far as like trainings and where they come from and how we pay for them.
Yeah, I would love to respond because I appreciate what you're bringing forward. First of all, you were talking about the dashboard in Merit, which is where people can see the trainings that they're required and kind of the progress that they're making. And I will just, qualifications that are required for particular job roles continue to be challenging, not just in early learning, but even the other programs. So Develop will house trainings for other programs within the agency. ECAP, ESIT, and child welfare combined in-home services programs will be utilizing this site. And I can tell you that they have similar challenges with how their various staff qualifications, how their individual staff understand the qualifications and connect to the trainings that they need. And that all connects to this LMS, as you're saying, because ideally all of those required trainings are housed there, easy to find, easy to know which ones you need, easy to access those. So those are all, I would say, really foundational in what we're trying to lead toward, is not just this one place to go, but also that real clarity depending on your role and your program type to really help people, not just with whatever their present role is, but also if they change roles or if they aspire to change roles, that those things are clear and easily linked to training. So thank you for that sentiment. Is it really, I think, important in setting the direction for how we proceed. And then I also, I want to clarify, and I might need some help with this because even though I'm working in the LMS and familiar, I don't necessarily know all of the required trainings, but childcare basics is in the LMS. That is one of the required trainings. Jared, I'm not entirely, the 30-hour training that you meant might have some other title that I might be missing that others might know of, whether that one's actually in the LMS or not.
Childcare basics.
Okay, that is in the LMS, I'm pleased to say. And I think this really, to your point about there's the cost savings, there's an element of equity and people being able to access that training wherever they're from at whatever time in order to get that requirement met. So that is really one of the reasons we really love having this LMS, is it creates that opportunity for people to get that training in this online self-paced way.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I see Dave has his hands up as well.
Yeah, I'll be quick. A couple of thoughts. One, and I think that Karma maybe answered this a little bit with just the technology and the kind of the technology challenges sometimes. But one of the things that we've struggled with time-wise is that people meet childcare basics with an alternative method. So let's say that they have their 12 ECE credits or equivalents. The only thing that they need to complete at that time is the 5 health and safety modules. When they complete those 5 health and safety modules, the system and Merit do not talk to each other. So it requires about 4 emails going back and forth with licensor, with Merit, to be able to confirm that that person took those classes, and then to be able to get that counted on their Merit side to be able to meet the requirement for the initial training requirement, that childcare basics. So that's one. And then the second thing, and maybe I might be missing this, and you guys please tell me if I'm wrong, and maybe this is what Jared was getting to and I was just not listening to it correctly, but I feel like there should be unlimited online access to both childcare basics and to PACE that do not involve you having to sign up for a cohort. Like, they should just be modules that you can take. You can wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and take it, wake up at 11 and take it. The minute that you are registered and ready to go to be a licensed childcare staff, you should be able to click on a button and take that class. And that and I'm seeing a lot of head shaking, that does not exist in our world right now. Mm-hmm. And I've missed why that has been a challenge to be able to get that, because clearly the challenge right now is there's not enough people to teach that class, which is why cohorts are getting pushed out months. There's people that aren't able to take this class. And when we've had that challenge before, we've had a struggle with space actually being able to get licensed because somebody wasn't able to take the course. They don't have the ability even to be able to spend the money and take the time to get reimbursed later because they don't have that dollar up front. So the only way they can take the class is to be able to do it for free. And we were told, reach out to the licensor if that's the case. And the licensors are telling us they got to take the class before you get licensed. So there just seems to be a pathway in our world where those 2 big trainings, understanding that the challenge is staffing probably to teach them, that we could get an online format where people could just take them. And I know, Karma, that's probably not your world, but that would be I think a lot of people, that would change the dynamics, I think, of how people could onboard.
Yeah, there's a lot of nodding and some hearts there. This has come up before when Marlene and I came, and you're right, we're talking about the system and the technological aspect, but clearly the availability of the trainings is, I mean, that's the crux of having the site, right? And that is the benefit of having it. And it's been brought up to us previously about sort of limited trainings and this need that you express and all the kind of ramifications of not getting it. I might I'm going to be able to answer one piece, or at least speak to one piece, and then I might defer to this group to consider who else from DCYF might need to be brought in from our team to talk about training availability. And I will say there's currently conversations with training orgs and others working really hard to try to get the right distribution and number of trainings. What I can tell you, Dave, is that one of the things that Washington is really committed to with regard to professional development is evidence of learning. And currently some of the required trainings that live in the LMS are what we call a cohort model, and that is an instructed model. So that is a period, there's a time-bound period of time, there's an instructor, there's a consistent group of students. Those consistent students are moving through at their own pace. So even though the training period might be 2 weeks, some people will finish in 2 days. So there is a sort of self-paced, sort of access this content at my own determination element to it. But what you're speaking to, I think, is just why are these not asynchronous entirely? That would mitigate this issue of, do we have enough trainers to have enough trainings? And that is really outside of my ability to speak to. So I think I've shared what I can about the rationale, but I do feel that this warrants a deeper conversation, and that this group seems to want to engage in.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I know that was not your role, but I'm hoping that somebody else on here continues to hear that if we keep saying it, because it seems simple. I mean, it's already kind of built module based. And so why can't you just log in with your stars number, take tests at the end of each section like we do for a lot of other trainings, and get it done.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see you, Dave. Just fun to see you in this different context, by the way.
Absolutely. You too.
All right.
Awesome. Go ahead.
I was gonna, there was a question in the chat box, and then I was gonna continue with the presentation if that is okay. I know there was a lot of comments, and I think those are great feedback from our team. And I'm curious, Karma, are you gonna take these back to the WGQR team, or?
Yes, I will. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Okay, there was a question in the chat box from D. When do all providers get trained in a webinar about your systems? Can there be annual reviews and updates or changes? And I'm not entirely sure how to answer this. We do host monthly webinars on various topics. They're usually informational, but we typically ask people if, there's a topic they want us to do, we will cover that. And let me just put in the chat, like the webinars webpage. I mean, my contact info is on there. If there are specific topics that, the public wants to engage in, we can definitely focus on that. And there's a lot of merit related ones. They right now are only currently in English, but I know the team was working to get them available in multiple languages. So here's the webinars webpage, and the first ones are the merit webinars. I know that's where a lot of people have questions on navigating the system, how to do certain things around the system. So I'm not even sure if I'm answering your question correctly, but after we do user testing and all this stuff, we find out where people are needing help and assistance. We're going to be creating a lot of these support materials to onboard somebody to use this new system. And around that time, we will be marketing opportunities to, engage with the system, whether it's like through a learning webinar. There's going to be multiple ways we're going to go about this, because people don't just learn in one way, they learn in multiple spaces. They might want to join live or just watch a tutorial. So we are working on all of that right now. And once we're ready for the launch in 2024, it will be announced. And I don't know if this has been announced, but there's going to be a early learning wide newsletter. So it'll be announced on that. So that's really exciting. So everybody will get the same information moving forward. Dee, did I answer your question, or do you have a follow-up? All right, well, if you do, feel free to put it in the chat, but we can move on to the next slide unless anyone has additional questions around UX and testing and what that looks like.
Marlene.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I got the answer. I sometimes feel like we're getting so informed on these meetings, and I worry about the general lack of awareness across the board for providers, and wishing that could be, the updates that are important to us can also be conveyed to all providers. Yeah, and
I don't know if this is this public knowledge? I don't know if Katie's on here. The division is going to be creating a communications and engagement team. So we'll be able to streamline, you know, just the communications to all childcare providers around everything pertaining to them and all of these opportunities. So that'll be really exciting. Our web pages, you know, they're up and available. They have a lot of information, and sometimes it's a matter of, you know, saving the web page where the early learning web pages, so you're able to easily navigate the rest of them. But yes, that is great feedback and something DCYF is working towards for sure.
Thanks, Marlene. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Chinisi. I oversee our communication efforts for the division. And yes, we're going to be working closely with Karma to ensure that she has a robust communications plan so we can get, and I apologize for the sound of my voice, I'm under the weather, but so that we can get this same information in a more digestible way to our providers throughout the state, and hopefully in many methods. So more to come on that, but that is wonderful feedback. And the related to your follow-up question, I believe, we are also implementing a process where all of our new projects and initiatives will undergo refinement periods at least a year out, so that we can make sure we're capturing things from our internal staff and feedback from our external partners and stakeholders to make continuous improvements to all of our projects, programs, and systems. So please look forward to that, hopefully year after launch, to make sure that we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, there is a comment in the chat, and I don't know if it just says it's a good idea to have in-person trainings to have evidence for providers that they took the training. But back to the UX timeline, and if you have more questions, please put them in the chat. Well, here's a timeline, you're looking at it, but really we're just now starting to reach out and schedule participants. So I just earlier in the chat, I shared the 3 interest forms. Feel free to share those. Let me put it in the chat again. They are still open. And like I said, we are looking for Somali speakers. Definitely want to hear from the Somali community. And yeah, once we gather the feedback, we're going to synthesize the results of what we heard. We're going to go back to the training team, the WGQR team, and let them know about the results, what we heard, what changes should be made, what areas to focus on to help, you know, childcare providers and family friend and neighbor providers on board properly when the system launches. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of work around creating a lot of these support materials, tutorials, and yeah, because it's going to be, not only do you have to create all these, you have to also provide them in multiple languages. So there's going to be a lot of work around that. And there's additional comments around training in person. Karma, do you want to talk about Develop's webpage?
Yes, I did drop that into the chat a little bit earlier, when you were making the comment about communication. This is one of the ways that we have been communicating with this dedicated web page, but then also on the page itself, off on the lower right-hand side, there are monthly status updates. So we certainly encourage people to take a look at that. Just to say a little bit more about some of the resources that are being created, we're very excited about. We know people learn in a lot of different ways. It's part of the reason having in-person trainings available as well as online is so important, because not everyone really, gets the most out of online learning, or maybe vice versa. So we are creating a variety of different tools to support users. So those will be in the form of written tutorials. They will be translatable into Spanish and Somali. GIFs, and I think some people say GIFs. Anyway, little short videos where people can click to figure out how to take certain steps in the system. Those things will be available. So we're really building out a vision of very robust resource supports around how to do various things. And then I do want to say one more thing, because I've just been so impressed on how Marlene has coordinated the UX testing and her vision around it, because the user testing that she described is what I would consider sort of initially informative on how we're developing this site and how we're creating the materials. But we know these are initial things that are helping us prepare for the launch. What Marlene has helped frame for us is a vision of user testing that extends beyond that, where we revisit with different groups of users, to make sure that the materials we created are correct, or that now that we've moved from just this initial exposure and usage to some of the things, Katie, I think you were describing, where we were doing user testing with someone such as yourself to say, show us how you're interacting with Merit and this system, so that we can also start to look at and explore user testing beyond just these basic functions that we want to launch with, but user testing of some of the more sophisticated interactions that folks have around training. So one way you can stay tuned is to continue to check this website. And I keep thinking of things I want to say. I wanted to say that another consideration, something great I've learned from you, Marlene, is that when we think about when we would need to begin that outreach with users, we want to be very intentional, not to do it too soon, not to do it too late. It's like getting your wedding invitations out, right? If you send it too soon, people forget. They're not ready when it happens. So we are really, because the timeline has continued to shift, we are continuing to really try to hold and start with those trainers and training orgs, get them solid, and then strike that right moment to begin to engage with learners. So these are just some of the considerations. And again, we're going to continue to get that feedback along the way and share what we're doing through these updates. Next slide, I think is really just maybe the last one. Here, yeah, just want to extend a thank you for having us here, for the feedback that you give us when we come, and invite you to reach out to us if you have any questions or follow up. Gloria's hand is raised.
Yes, about the new websites, about Merit or any other websites, is going to be provide some training for providers, because, and also it's going to be training somebody who really know what providers need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And also you're going to be some record videos that if it's possible to be in the, for example, in the Spanish language, but the person who's going to record the videos has to speak clearly, slow, because the provider has to understand. And sometimes somebody really, they speak so fast because they know how to do this and go over there and blah, 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 and the provider gets lost. I mentioning this because for many years ago and right now, a lot of other people in the community is charging to providers money for training them and Merit. Some providers paying for 1 hour or 2 hours Merit training $250, and they don't receive all the training. And right now, some training, somebody is providing $150 for training, and I think any provider has to pay any cents for learn how to navigate these websites. I really appreciate if DCYF provide this training, and it's that somebody in the community is making money, is taking advantage from providers. Besides, we don't earn a lot of money. We have to pay for this when we don't need to. I don't know which plan can be put in place in there and do something, because it's a lot of people is benefiting themselves economically for these many changes DCYF is doing. And I think DCYF is not taking this in consideration. And that's when I want to present this. I don't pointing fingers with nobody, but I think it's very important to provide trainings for these new platforms, but really good very practical trainings, not too much, too many things. Only like, for example, for me, like a provider, what I need to know, how to access DCYF student portal, where I can go and what trainings I have to take, how I can bring my certificates. For merit, I need to know how to register a new person in merit, how to apply for STARS ID, how to apply for background check, how I can upload my trainings in there or register my trainings in there, how to register my facility, how to do like, you know, the specific things the provider need to know and not spending a lot of money. And sometimes they don't explain them what exactly they need to know. And I'm sorry for being late in this meeting, but I was in another DCYF meeting too. But I'm here now.
Well, thank you for those comments. And I picked out quite a lot of things that you were sharing. And one of the things I just want to say about the way that we're going to be creating some of the support materials for Spanish and Somali is the site will actually be translated into that language. And then the person who will be demonstrating either in video or a written tutorial or a GIF will be doing that in the site, in the language that they're speaking, which feels much more authentic, right? It will be what that user would expect to see if they have it translated into the language of their choice, and they'll be hearing that narration and they'll be seeing everything will be congruent with that language. So we're excited about that. And I think a lot of what you said, Gloria, just underscores some of the things that I heard Jared and Dave say about just training needs in general and training structure. So I'll be sharing those with my colleagues.
Karma, there's one question in the chat. When will trainers and orgs get interaction on transition to develop?
When will trainings and training orgs, was that the question?
Trainers and orgs.
Yeah, we have been in communication through the OTM structure facilitated by together with Elizabeth Frick, and through some of the regular contractor meetings that we've had. So trainers have actually, some trainers have taken some initial steps with us. Other trainers have been shared what we're calling phases of implementation support. And those are geared specifically for training orgs and trainers. And they outline 4 steps that describe how they will be brought into the system. And unfortunately, of course, the timeline continues to move. So that has shifted when we've begun those phases, but we have shared those phases of what those OTMs can expect. And we've been creating very, what I think are very supportive opportunities for one-on-one engagement with those organizations so that, you know, they really have a wraparound of support. So we haven't really started, but there's been a lot of communication so far.
All right, I think that, I mean, that's so much information, and I like the wedding announcement analogy to, you know, not too early, but not too late, you know, and just being transparent that it's taken a little bit longer, that, you know, it helps us providers, because we have been excited. I've personally been excited this whole time, but yeah, we look forward to it. And check out the links. A lot of links were sent by you guys, Karma and Marlene, that you can click on and get onto the DCYF websites and webinars. So yeah, I think there's no more hands raised, and I think most of the questions did get answered. So yeah,
I see that there is one comment from Jacqueline about how her coach was able to help her sit down with her and navigate CC. And we have been supporting a lot of the early achievers work recently. And I do want to say, yes, your coach is your resource. So definitely reach out to your coach. And I can't stress that enough. They are also there as an additional support to help you navigate these systems and more.
Great. Thank you, Marlene. Jessica, are you able to throw in the Survey Monkey so we can get the get your feedback so far for all of you perfect that have listened thus far? All of your comments and questions that go into the Survey Monkey, they really do help us in future meetings and what you guys are looking for and got out of the meeting for this first part. So, all right, Julie, do you want to take over?
Sure, you bet. Let's see, do we have I haven't really checked. I know I saw Jess here and Athena. Is Athena here already?
Athena's here.
Yay. Okay, great. So we're going to be moving on to our next topic, which is the Trauma-Informed Care Dual Language Designation Awards. And we've got two presenters. So we've got Trauma-Informed and Healing-Centered Care Manager, Jess Maurer. I hope I said that right. And Dual Language and Multilingual Learning Manager, Athena Jimenez Manalo. Also, I hope I said that right. And they are going to provide provider updates, and they're going to gather some feedback on trauma-informed care and the Dual Language Designation Awards. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Julie. I really appreciate your time. I'll kick it off in advance of Athena taking over for the dual language designation. As Julie noted, I'm Jess. I'm the Trauma-Informed and Healing-Centered Care Manager in the Workforce Growth, Quality, and Recognition team. I'm pretty proud of myself for actually saying that properly now after some changes. You folks know, oftentimes we DCYF folks with moves, we have a hard time saying where we are. So I've finally come to grasp on that, which is a good start for this presentation. So a little bit about what we're up to today. We can move on to that next slide. As Julie indicated, we'll be reporting out basically how we did this past fiscal year for the newly launched trauma-informed and healing-centered care supports. And so before I get into the minutiae and I ask you for your feedback, we'll talk about a little bit of background about how we came to be growing trauma-informed and healing-centered supports for the early learning workforce. And also I'm going to cover some key foundational concepts of trauma-informed and healing-centered care, because I do that whenever I have an opportunity and I find that it's helpful for us all to have a foundational understanding of what we're talking about before we get into some of the more detailed nuances of the discussion. So I'll just talk to you about key principles of trauma-informed care and stuff. I'll also share with you what we've been up to in terms of engagement. You may recall or not, this is my third time with you folks today. So I've been with the agency just more than a year and a half, and I'm turning into a regular, and I like that. I like communicating with you folks. And we'll also share with you key takeaways and lessons learned. You know, it's been a new thing we're doing, and so we certainly have some lessons learned and some improvements to make. And then, of course, we want to hear from you about what we should be doing better and how we can do better around this. I'm recognizing many of your names, too, as people who I've engaged with around the supports. So I have a feeling you folks have some feedback to share, and I'm looking forward to that. So with that, I'm going to get into the TIC basics fairly quickly. You know, I have a half an hour with you. I will take, questions. I'll pause periodically because those of you who are familiar with me, I like engagement quite a bit, but I also want to try to leave time for Athena too. So I'll pause periodically and ask for your questions. With that, just a quick run through, and some of this may be really remedial for you folks, as we have talked a lot before, and we have all this new wonderful trauma-informed care training going out. But just as a basic primer, I like to answer, you know, oftentimes people are like, yeah, we want to be trauma-informed, but we don't know exactly what that looks like. And so that's what DCYF is really working on right now, is providing a framework and guidance on what exactly trauma-informed care is, and having everybody learn the same language and things like that. And just a little other note too, is we are expanding these supports across the agency. So we're really making it so we internalize trauma-informed care too. So it's not just like, you need to do this. So just kind of a little aside about that I'm happy to talk to you about at another time. So anyway, just the basics, right? So what is trauma-informed care? Usually I tell people trauma-informed individual, program, agency. To be trauma-informed, they understand these 4 R's, right? And so what does this mean? This is basically like a roadmap to the provision of trauma-informed care. So very specifically, again, we can apply this to a program, an agency, or even Jess, right? So a trauma-informed entity, first and foremost, realizes that trauma is a challenge, right? We know it's out there. We know it's one of the biggest public health issues of our time. So we're just realizing that it's a challenge that we need to address, right? Secondly, the second R is to recognize, right? We work to recognize the signs and symptoms of trauma in the people we serve, ourselves, and our colleagues. Again, really highlighting that trauma-informed and healing-centered work is holistic. It's not something that we can just be like, you do this. We also have to do it. So we need to recognize holistically the impacts of trauma. And what does that mean? It means a kid who maybe is throwing a fit in a classroom, recognizing that that may very well be a trigger that the kid is having. Like maybe he didn't have a safe space to store his belongings and he's worried that his stuff is going to get stolen or whatever, you know, he doesn't feel comfortable for whatever reason, right? So recognizing. The third R is to respond to trauma. And that's what we're all working to do right now. And it's the exciting part of this work for me is that we're working to incorporate incentives and policies and trainings and all of that stuff to respond to trauma. So that's what we're in the middle of right now. And then ultimately, we want to resist re-traumatization too. I mean, we don't want to be hurting people more than they've already been hurt. And I think that's fairly intuitive. So we can move on to the road map to trauma-informed care, which are the 6 key principles, which I talk about quite a bit. You know, as I said, those R's are basically a roadmap. Now we're moving on to road signs, rather. I don't know if I mixed that up, but these are definitely road signs. We're getting closer to the increasing provision of trauma-informed care when we understand these 6 key principles. Each of these principles anchors a host of practices that can be applied in a classroom environment or in many environments, right? So safety, for example, what does it mean to create a safe space in a classroom environment? It means being at eye level with kids. It means using our indoor voice, not my big presentation voice that I'm using right now. It means a safe space for kids to store their belongings. It means orderly transitions between activities during the day, right? So trustworthiness and transparency, it means me disclosing to you everything I know about certain aspects of policies that could affect me, affect a family or something like that, right? So just keeping in mind that there's a whole host of practices and there's a whole framework for this stuff, which we're really working to export now to the early learning workforce, which I'm super jacked about. Moving on, actually, we can talk about the healing-centered approach. You know, this is a fairly new concept, which has been very widely embraced within the trauma-informed care community and also within the equity-minded communities for a variety of reasons. And I'll read to you what the healing-centered approach is, just in case you're on the phone or something and might not be able to see the screen. But a healing-centered approach, according to Dr. Sean Ginwright, who created this approach, is holistic. Again, citing that this is a holistic thing. It's not just like one portion of a system, right? And it involves culture, spirituality, civic action, and collective healing. We are all in this together, you know, and also a healing-centered approach views trauma not simply as an individual isolated experience, but rather highlights the ways in which trauma and healing are experienced collectively. So that's really the big part of it. You know, there's a critique sometimes of the original trauma-informed care work and that it's not strengths-based. You know, healing-centered work is very much a strengths-based approach that highlights the fact that healing happens in community and not in isolation. So it's a really beautiful thing for DCYF to be embracing and systems to be embracing as well. So we are working to live up to the healing-centered approach currently. Moving on, we can move on, I think, to the next slide. And so this is fairly fundamental for many of you. I think everybody in the Zoom room probably understands that the Fair Start for Kids Act directed DCYF to grow all of these trauma-informed supports, right? And so that's how I ended up getting hired. And that's how we're doing all this work. We were funded through the Fair Start for Kids Act originally. We have continued funding through the biennium to continue doing this work, which I'm enormously excited about. But just as a reminder, you know, originally these supports came by way of the Fair Start for Kids Act, which directed DCYF to provide additional compensation for additional staff who have certain specialty credentials, and also trauma-informed professional development and training. Also directed us to purchase like screening tools and things like that for developmental screening. So it directed DCYF to do a host of really cool things, and we actually did a bunch of that. So per the Fair Start for Kids Act, I'm going to provide you just a little timeline of how we came to be where we are today, and then I'll get into some more of the data about like how many individual providers, for example, received funding through Fair Start for Kids Act awards. And then we'll ask for your input here in a couple of minutes too. But just a reminder, this all originated through this historic investment in early childhood passed back in 2021 by the Washington State Legislature. And then moving on to our timeline, we have some milestones to celebrate, right? And I actually probably, I don't know about you, but I might actually have to wear my glasses to see some of these. So I hope it's big enough for you to see. But you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen in January 22 was when I was hired to this position. I actually moved from Montana to Washington State because I was so excited about this work. So that's where it began for me. And then in April 2022, we actually established a provider advisory group, and we asked that advisory group, we said, hey, here's the Fair Start for Kids Act. How do you want to grow these trauma-informed care supports? And that's how DCYF came up with this tiered reimbursement structure that we've been using to deliver the financial incentives that you're likely very well familiar with. And then in May 2022, well, actually, that's a little bit of a typo there, but so you can see that we continued to move through this process fairly quickly, right? And in January 23, we began expanding our TIC training delivery, opening up, I think we counted an additional 142 instances of training between January and June of this last fiscal year. So it was just a huge amount of trauma-informed care training that we were doing. So a big lift from our partners, from trainers, from coaches, from the whole system. And I just really want to recognize and celebrate all of our partners in this work, and that we really had a huge lift in delivering these trainings and putting out the awards fairly quickly. And then we hired another person to assist the work in May, which I was super happy about. And she's been a huge assist for this whole process. And then in 2023, we recognized that we actually hit the nose with our goal of authorizing $2.2 million in awards, which is, you know, most of the Fair Start for Kids Act funds that we were provided through our individual section was delivered to individual providers for those awards. So just really, as you can see in this timeline, you know, the point we're trying to make is this happened actually really quickly, you know, and so we'll talk more about what happens next as we have some more time to make revisions to how we're doing this work. And so the next step here, we can take a look at strengths, right? So I noted we had a whole bunch of providers receive what I think was an average award of just more than $700, if I remembered, for each one of the awards that we authorized. And so we're looking at 3,077 individual providers who we authorized for awards. So that was really exciting for me. We moved a lot of money really quickly. And also other strengths I want to highlight is, you know, growing trauma-informed care awareness. You know, again, I think many more people have a foundational language now around this work, understand the key principles and concepts of trauma-informed care. So we've covered just a ton of ground in a year, basically. And also we've done this all in a really collaborative way. And I hope you agree. I'm going to hear from you in a little bit too, but you know, we've really tried to be collaborative. We employed, you know, liberatory design and then the provider design team, and we'll continue to do that as well. And something we're really focused on is equity throughout this work. And as you might have seen, equity is the 6th key principle of trauma-informed care. So you can't do trauma-informed care work without embracing equity. So just really highlight that that's a real cornerstone for all of the stuff that we're doing right there. So those are some strengths. We can move on here to feedback. So this is where I'm going to pause and say, hey, what do you think? You know, I want to hear some of your questions, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about the work we've done with our community engagement. But I'm going to pause just for a second to say I've been talking at you for a good 10, 15 minutes. And do you have any questions? I know I speak quickly. Jamie, I'd love to hear from you.
I think that this was an amazing idea, and I really like the concept of it. I think the thing that was really difficult for us is I worked really hard to push my staff through the training to get it done by the end of the fiscal year, to really do a good job of that. And then when we inquired about the payments multiple times, they told us, well, you'll get it when we do our second round of payments. Like, there's no communication. Like, my staff were like, we told them all about this bonus that they were going to get and stuff. And we finished our training by June. And it was a long set of trainings because it was conscious discipline, and then nothing. And I think for me, that's really disheartening to give my staff that information and tell them they're going to get a bonus for that. And we worked really hard to get it done. And then we didn't get the payment, and we didn't get any communication about not getting the payment. I had to email multiple times to find out what was going on. Early achievers coaches didn't know what was going on. And to me, if we're going to roll something out like this, we need to be prepared to roll something out for everybody that does it, and not just a group. And then we take a however many month pause and then do another group. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Jamie. And I know I saw your name and I just looked up our email exchanges. So I was like, I know. Yeah, absolutely. With regard to the communication, I'll tell you that there's a lot of moving pieces. And so the communication, absolutely, we could do a better job. It ended up that I finally went into like the Merit inbox and just started answering emails because, you know, we needed to move them through. So we just had a high volume moving $2.2 million in like what ended up being 6 months, it was really hard, right? And so yes, we can do a better job with communication. And then there are some nuances here that I'm kind of alluding to, in that, as many of you are understanding of kind of the back end of merit, things like that, we were just talking about that. What happens in some instances is not all trainers were using the primary training template. And with your training in particular, I think what happened is it started even before we announced awards. So somebody had started with a conscious discipline, like in, I don't know, like before we had moved to put everybody on the primary template. So we didn't capture that in your data, in our data. We just didn't even have your names in there. And so we had to go back and find the template that was used by Jamie Ashton, who was your trainer, and say, okay, Jamie started this before we were moving everybody to the same template. And that's why we missed you. And so Merit was just kind of fielding emails and like, hold on tight, you know, we'll give you your money. But they didn't actually look into the minutia until I jumped in and I was like, hey, you know, just digging into it because I have the capacity to, and not everybody on our team does, right? So, but so just a little more background minutia than and we're working to do better. So just really to acknowledge that, yeah, it's really frustrating. It was really hard for people. I understand, you know, if I'm waiting on $800 and I want to be rewarded for something I've done, it just doesn't feel good to like have to fight for it or deal with a lot of bureaucracy or whatever. So yes, absolutely, I hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Other thoughts? I know, and again, we're gonna ask for your feedback in Jamboard, and I'm gonna cover a couple more little slides here. Jared, another familiar name.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna share, I think that like this, I thought that this training was really great and I thought that it was really important. I think that what kind of comes to me is like, I would be interested of those 3,000 folks, like how many of them were frontline staff? You know, I think that like for us, like I was able to take it and like share some stuff during like a staff meeting and like things like that. And my cap is off to Jamie for managing to get, you know, staff taking it or staffing to cover for them or get them to give up their nights and weekends. Like that's something that's extraordinarily difficult to do. But I think that the overall, the Cliff Notes version is just that I think that we continually add these new trainings, and even when they're super great and super impactful, it just like piles. And like as a provider, you're like, well, is this more important than like the head abuse training? Like, is this less important than like first aid CPR? Like, is this, you know? And so we kind of get these trainings and we're all trying to, you know, kind of sort in like when and how to get them to staff. So I just wanted to kind of like share that of like, it's often that we'll have a training like this and I'll be like, this is really good. And also I have no idea when the majority of my staff like will be able to get access to this.
Yeah, I totally hear
Jared,
that.
the only way we were able to do it was by closing down a half day once a month for 6 months. That was the only way we could get it done.
Yeah, I hear that. And I do know it's a lot. And I can tell you, we are working on some planning to make it very clear, you know, a trajectory for growing trauma-informed and social emotional learning. So if people want more information on a clear direction, we're working on that right now. So I can tell you through preschool development grant this year, we're planning it's just like the ground, you know, what could it look like just for, you know, scaffolding folks through this. And then of course we'll be reaching out through mini institutes, which I'll talk to you more about in the engagement slide, but certainly wanting to make this more intuitive and easier and less stressful and easier to prioritize. So I definitely hear that feedback from you, Jared and Jamie as well. Jacqueline? See, I think your hand is up. Okay. Any other wonderings coming up?
Sí.
There you go.
Mi pregunta es relacionada con el tema del trauma, que dice, ¿qué tipo de apoyo en materiales de atención informar sobre el trauma necesitamos los proveedores?
Thank you for your question.
Para mí, sabiendo que el trauma es un tema tan extenso y tan grande y que se distingue el trauma por fases y grados del que se pueden tener, siento que las clases que nos proporciona Instituto Imagen son repetitivas. Yo ya he tomado por 2 años consecutivos las mismas clases. Entonces, lo que yo quiero es aprender más sobre el trauma, no quedarme en solamente esos entrenamientos que nos proporcionan. Quiero que se pueda contratar personal capacitado en el trauma, o sea, psicólogo, una doctora, porque en ocasiones hacemos preguntas y las personas que nos dan el entrenamiento no tienen esas preguntas para contestarlas porque siguen algo solamente que les proporcionan para dar la clase. Entonces, pienso que sí se necesita para esta clase de entrenamiento sobre el trauma que ahorita se está viendo mucho a un nivel alto en los niños. Necesitamos gente profesional que tenga la credencial, las acreditaciones para podernos enseñar.
Thank you so much for that. Can we have a translator in here for non-Spanish speakers? Do we have someone working on that?
We do. We have Lisette here. She's probably getting ready to interpret that for us.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Sí.
Oh, Lizette, I think we can't hear you.
I could hear you. I don't know why others can't.
I can't hear.
Oh, I couldn't either. Oh, it could have something to do with the way the interpretation settings are set for those to hear in Spanish and not.
Yeah, so Lizette can hear us, but she can't communicate with us because she's in the interpretation room. I don't remember all of it, but I can help with translation if that's helpful. It was a long question, so I will do my best. So one was about providing trainings that are more profound than just the foundational trauma-informed care trainings that are currently available. Jacqueline did share that she has taken the same training a couple of years in a row, and she's really interested in going in delving further into, excuse me, trauma-informed care, and also interested in hiring more trainers and more staff who are well-versed in trauma-informed care. And give me a second, I'm going to ask Jacqueline if she can share some of her other questions. Jacqueline, perdón, es que no escuché todo lo que dijo, entonces ¿podría repetir, por favor, la pregunta que tiene? Sí les dije sobre la capacitación y que sí la busca que sea más profundo de lo que de lo que ha participado usted. Y también les dije su pregunta sobre entrenadoras que tengan la capacitación de trauma.
Sí, lo que pasa es que las clases que nos proporcionas es Instituto Imagen y pues siguen las mismas, ya las he tomado 2 años consecutivos, entonces lo que quiero es aprender más, crecer más. Yo busco, pero tengo otras compañeras que si no tienen la habilidad de buscar, entonces se quedan solamente tomando esas mismas clases. Y sé que hay cambios, hay estudios, hay cosas nuevas y el trauma tiene fases y grados en los niños. Entonces, sí creo que necesitamos un personal más capacitado y que nos pueda responder a las preguntas, porque si las instructoras se guían por un folleto o por un curso que les dan, entonces tal vez no hay como preguntas más abiertas y palabras que no entienden, no las pueden contestar si no ellas buscan la respuesta. Entonces, para mí sería muy importante o que cambien las clases y que pongan personal más capacitado para ese tipo de entrenamiento del trauma.
Okay, bueno, gracias. So it was less of a question and more of a request that there be additional trainings and that they're searchable and that they stay up to date with the latest research. And also when training participants have questions, it's really important that the trainers are well versed in trauma-informed care, because oftentimes participants may have more profound questions than what's available in the training, or more profound questions that trainers are able to respond to.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you so much, Athena. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I can try to address those and tell me if this is sufficient too. So I might need some additional support from Athena here. But with regard to more trainings, we are working on that. And I can tell you that, and you said kind of more than just foundational, more in-depth trainings. We have new offerings coming down the pike. We have a training which we're actually thinking about as kind of foundational, but it covers things that none of our other trainings cover at this point, including those 6 key principles that I just talked about and the 4 R's, and going into detail about like some of those practices that can be employed, and more background on like trauma and ACEs, and things we need to be careful about when we're looking at the ACEs science and things like that. So we are coming up with more professional development offerings for everybody, including for trainers. So that foundational training that I just referenced, we did do a pilot of it with coaches this year, actually, with CCA WA coaches and also ECAP coaches. So, and we got great feedback from it. So that's part of our kind of working through this training content that we're building in partnership with Cultivate and others as well. So just to really highlight that. And we even did a provider co-design session with some small childcare providers around this training. So we are cultivating more content. Totally hear what you're saying about coaches and trainers needing to be versed in this stuff, and we are working on it. Like I said, we provided one of our first pilots of the training for an award actually to coaches for that foundational training that I'm referencing. So definitely working on that. Yeah, and there were so many people clamoring to get trainings too during this past, the end of the fiscal year, because we didn't know if we had more training money coming down the pike, more award money. So everybody was like trying to get into those trainings. So there was a backlog. So just to acknowledge that, and then yeah, hiring more trainers and staff, I think I addressed that. We're definitely working to get everybody up to speed. And again, we're working to get this stuff exported across systems, not just in early learning, right? We want everybody to know what trauma-informed care is. So not sure if I hit all of those points, but I do want to acknowledge that we have a Jamboard too, which I believe Jessica already shared. So just highlighting that you folks can share more information too there. And I'm happy to continue taking questions. And Gloria, I see you just unmuted. Anything that I missed here, Athena and Gloria, with regard to those wonderings?
Okay, I following Jacqueline comment. I really agree with her about like we need to go into more deep, but I've been requesting in another groups, DCYF groups, like providers, we do different roles.
Yeah.
We do counseling, doctors, psychologists, cleaning, teachers, a lot of roles. And I think most of the deep trainings, we need a special mental health provider who we can consult kids' cases and have supervision in that, because every kid is different and not all the providers we have the same situations. But will be a big challenge if DCYF provide a specific mental health providers. I know it's one in child care aware. I don't know if he's here, Victor Cardenas, but he's the only one who is working with a provider in some trauma or behavior with the children, but I think we need more. We need a specific group of providers to have access and the moment we need them, not be in the waiting list, because we send in families. We refer our families to mental health services, family therapy, and they are in the waiting list. Yeah. And we keep dealing with those children every day, 8 hours, 10 hours. And I've been requesting, like, I think the Head Start and the EPIC, they had their own mental health professional who supervise them, who support them. To be a family child care provider, we need the same service in our homes. Not like they have to be with us every day, but at least we can counsel with them twice a month, maybe like a supervision case, a consultation case. That's going to be better than receiving trainings, because, going one-to-one is confidential and is better.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I mean, we need many more mental health supports, absolutely. And I will say we're working to grow our infant early childhood mental health supports and things like that, you know, and very specifically Section 304 of the Fair Start for Kids Act, which gives me my directives, speaks very specifically to infant early childhood mental health support. So I appreciate that, Gloria. And then just checking in, Athena and Jacqueline, before I just flash back to the slides quickly. Athena is supposed to speak in 3 minutes. So I want to just be sensitive to not stepping on any other toes. And you can also share feedback there in the Jamboard too. And I'm always happy to talk to you one-on-one. Like many of you already have my email address. So like always happy to try to field these inquiries because I want to resolve them. You know, I don't want people feeling badly about this stuff. It's, you know, one of the challenges with money, it's like everybody needs it, right? But I'm worried that it kind of takes away the soul of the trauma-informed and healing-centered work. So I really want to make us think about the soul of this work, which I'm hearing Gloria reference, and Jacqueline, it sounds like you really, you know, you're feeling it. So I appreciate that. And we are doing everything we can to make these processes better for everybody and make sure people have the learning and knowledge and supports that are necessary, but it is a uphill climb of sorts. Anyway, just to highlight that we've been talking to a lot of people, right, about this stuff, you know, and so just highlighting that we've done a lot of engagement. As I noted, this is my 3rd time at Provider Supports. We've been to ELAC. Actually, that's a little typo on the ELAC. That was actually last October that we went to ELAC, even though we're set up to do it again here in the near future. Been to IPEL a couple of times. Advisory group pre-June 2023, we convened 7 times. That provider co-design team that I referenced at the beginning of this talk with you was the one that actually spelled out how we were going to distribute in that tiered award structure. We convened back in June, and we're going to reconvene provider design teams and also coach design and trainer design. So getting all of the people to come together in these mini training institutes, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, or these mini feedback institutes rather. So anyway, you can see we've been doing a bunch of stuff and really trying to get feedback from folks, engaging in, you know, human-centered design, et cetera, and really wanting to hear from you what could be helpful. So we'll continue doing that. As it says on the bottom here, the Early Learning Institute provider co-design sessions will be holding regionally. So that's what I was kind of just trying to talk about, is reaching out across the regions to hear what you folks think could be helpful for trauma-informed care and how we can better streamline these supports, right? Make it so Jamie has less frustration, and, you know, and hopefully Jared doesn't have questions about being a subsidy provider, like just really working on our communication and stuff like that. So I think we can pop to the next slide. So that's what I'm talking about here. You know, we're really working to streamline our payment processes, and we'd love to hear from you in that Jamboard if you have ideas about streamlining those payment processes. You know, we've heard from folks already that it could be helpful just to have one entity distribute the payments. Like, is that what you folks want? Share it on the Jamboard. Do you think it was too hard to have various people distributing the funds? You know, we're evaluating that right now, what it's going to look like when we resume payments here in a couple of months or a few months. We know we need to work on our communication. Communication is a challenge. We're a really big ship, you know, and so getting our communication streamlined is something we're working diligently on. You know, Marlene noted that we're working to form, you know, more of a division-wide communication team. So she's really excited about that. I'm excited too, because I'm hoping it helps to work to improve some of our communications going out the door too, right? And then thinking also about how we can create a meaningful learning progression. This goes back to Jared's point, right? Jared, you were talking about, we don't know what to prioritize. Like, should we prioritize X, Y, or Z? And so we're working on that right now. We're evaluating how we can create a meaningful progression of training in various arenas, but in my wheelhouse in trauma-informed and social-emotional learning, very specifically, we're looking at that. So here's how you can work to grow your skills, a more distinct learning trajectory. So that's one of the things we're working on right now. So with that, I'm going to pause because I've taken up my airspace for the day, but here are the feedback questions that we have for the Jamboard. And I would love it if you put your thoughts in there, your guidance for us. We do review this, we do circle back and address your questions. And I've received such great feedback from you folks today. So want to continue that dialogue. And again, just encouraging you, if you want to talk, reach out to me, email me, I'm happy to chat, you know. So with that, I will wrap up my presentation. Happy to hear briefly anything else that might be coming up.
Thanks for being here, Jess.
Thanks for having me, folks. I really appreciate your input, and we'll continue the discussion.
Well, we're ready to move on with Athena.
And just thanks again to Athena for the assistance too.
You got it, Jess. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Athena Jimenez Manalo. I'm the Dual Language and Multilingual Learning Manager at DCYF, and I'm here to talk to you today about the dual language designation and get a little bit of feedback from you on what you're hearing and what the direction is that you think we should go. Next slide, please. So similar, you can tell Jess and I worked a little bit together to prepare our presentations today. So similarly, I will be giving background information. I will share the data and provider engagement we have up to date. I will share some key takeaways and then some refinements. And in there, you will have opportunities for feedback. Katie did share that Jamboard link. So you also are welcome to jump ahead and start answering those questions in the Jamboard. I am slides 4, 5, and 6 on that Jamboard. All right, so what is dual language learning? Dual language learning is a bilingual education model where children learn literacy, content, and culture in 2 languages, typically English and a partner language that is spoken in the local community. As you can see from the image here, literacy, content, and culture, also called bilingualism and biliteracy, grade level academic achievement, and cross-cultural competence. Choose your favorite buzzwords of the day. Those are the pillars and goals of dual language learning. And like I said, that is reflected in this image from the Center of Applied Linguistics. Next slide, please. So the dual language designation is an acknowledgement of practices that meet the needs of multilingual children and families. What you will see as we go along this slide is we actually went into a few centers and did some filming for a dual language learning video. And we also took still images. So this is an image from the Camas Early Learning Salish Language Program just outside of Spokane. And dual language programs have proven to be the best method for closing opportunity gaps for emergent multilingual and English learners. Next slide. All right. So the ultimate goal and long-term impact of our dual language designation is that children will have access to dual language care and education in the language and environment preferred by their families. And this very much aligns with OSPI's lofty goal that all children will have access to dual language education in K-12 by the year 2040. These 3 images, the top one is again from the Camas Early Learning Salish Language Program in Spokane. The middle image is from La Casa Hogar in Yakima, Spanish-English program, and that bottom image is from Tequila's Early ECAP Dual Language Program. I think I said Tequila already, over here on the west side. I say over here because I'm over here on the west side, but over here on the west side. Next slide, please. So this work was really supported by the Fair Start for Kids Act. Section 305 directed DCYF to establish a dual language designation and funding awards that could be used for individual wages for bilingual staff, professional development training, dual language curricula, training programs, instructional materials, or other related expenses. And we did work with a culturally, linguistically, and regionally diverse stakeholder group to develop that criteria for the dual language designation. And that criteria are the dual language standards and best practices. Before we move on, I do want to make it clear that under legislative language, this designation is intended for licensed or certified childcare providers accepting state subsidy and ECAP or ECAP, early ECAP contractors. Okay, next slide, please. And then a quick overview of the work. What's not listed here is that dual language and early learning really started to receive legislative support in 2017 when they directed DCYF to develop a dual language learner training, which I know some of you on this call have either delivered that training or taken that training because I recognize names. But jumping forward, so I have been with DCYF I'm coming up on 2.5 years. I was hired in April 2021 and FSKA passed the next month. And that's when we really started getting our work group together. So In December, we started to really convene that work group of community and partners and stakeholder experts. We also worked really hard to expand training delivery by increasing our contracts with school districts and other partner institutions and organizations. We hired a dual language coordinator, Yolanda, in March 2022, and she has been a great support for moving this work forward. Last spring, we, in addition to our advisory group, we also had provider design and tribal listening sessions where we shared what the advisory group came up with and asked for additional input and feedback. Finally, in winter 2022, so just under a year ago, we were able to publish our dual language standards and best practices after extensive review with our advisory group, with our internal subject matter experts and folks. And then in spring of this year, April 3rd, we launched our dual language designation, and it was incredibly successful in that we had a lot of folks opt into the designation. And so this summer, we distributed $3.3 million to 889 sites. What I did not mention yet is that these awards were classroom specific. So yes, they did go to sites, the site-specific designation, and the awards were classroom-specific, and this was because after hearing from our various advisory and provider design groups, we realized that the same amount of money does not have the same impact for a licensed family home as it does for a large center with 20 classrooms. So for that reason, we did make it a classroom-specific award. Yeah, we can move forward. And so here what you're seeing are all of the classrooms that requested a dual language designation and where they are located across the state. We reached 26 out of 39 counties, a total of just over 1,300 sites, 16 of them being tribal sites, a total of just over 1,800 classrooms, with 62 of them being tribal classrooms, a total of 50 languages, 8 of them being tribal. And again, a total of $3.3 million was awarded to classrooms, with $254,000 of that going to tribal language revitalization programs. I will go to the next slide, please. All right, so our summary of engagement. Before June of this year, we met with our dual language advisory group 7 times. We met with our internal advisory group 5 times. We met with IPEL, or the Indian Policy of Early Learning, 7 times. We went to ELAC once. We had a provider design group, which met twice. We participated in the Early Achievers Values and Processes group last year. We were here at Provider Supports in November, just before we got started with this dual language designation work. And then Michelle and Mallory from my team came in April of last year to share an update about our work. We did distribute provider and family surveys from winter to spring of last year. We had provider webinars 5 times, and we participated in the CCA of Washington Coach Field webinar 4 times, ECAP Coach and Director meetings twice. Right now, we're in a debrief mode with our partners, and upcoming, we will be working again with our advisory group, with coaches and providers, and tribal nations to see how we refine and improve our processes. All right, next slide, please. Oh, I actually have, if you're interested, I do have a publication from our Office of Communications about our community-driven outreach and engagement strategies. All right, well, this just says refinement. All right, next slide, please. So key takeaways and lessons learned. We are hearing that it would be helpful if we streamline our processes. So what we mean by that is instead of, streamline our payment processes. It was a manual process this year, and we hope to not have it be manual anymore so it can be quicker. As always, we want to increase coach and provider support. So we, with the limited time that we had from the legislation passing, to the end of the biennium, we had to build a system and spend all the money. And within there, we were able to launch a few coach and provider supports, including a revised version of the dual language training, which more closely aligns with the dual language best practices and standards. But we want to continue increasing those coach and provider supports, especially as we move toward finalizing that designation for all those early adopters providers. We want to continue community and provider education and awareness of what dual language is and best practices for implementing dual language. And of course, what is not on here is communication. Of course, we can always do better with communication, as Jess said, and that is the goal, is to continue communicating clearly in multiple languages and in a timely fashion. We will ask for your input on other things in just a moment, but like I said, that Jamboard's already available to you. So if you already have thoughts and ideas, please feel free to throw those on there. Next slide, thank you. So as far as continued feedback, as I mentioned, this designation launch was an early adopters phase. And it is part of early achievers, which is why we're using early achievers terminology here. Our goal over this next year is really to collect feedback from providers, coaches, and tribal nations about the application process, about the funding amounts, about the tie of the funding toward childcare outcomes. We're working on story collection and video production, and we really want to think about the impact for tribal communities. All right, next slide, please. And then, so this is the feedback opportunity for you all. How do you recommend that DCYF collects feedback from providers who requested the dual language designation? What questions should we be asking related to dual language designation? And what changes can we make that will result in improvements for the dual language designation? And I have been speaking for a straight almost 15 minutes. So I will pause here at the feedback opportunity so you all can ask questions in the chat. I see I have a couple of them, or put some ideas on the Jamboard. So I can answer Linda's question, which is, are trauma-informed care and dual language available to all providers or only to those accepting subsidy or ECAP? I will say the dual language designation is legislatively only for licensed and certified providers accepting state subsidy and ECAP or early ECAP programs. That was not a DCYF decision. It was in the legislative language. So basically our resources available for all providers and payment and funding available to subsidy and ECAP. Yes, that's it. So the dual language training, DCYF's dual language training, is available to all providers. The funding award for the designation is only available to providers accepting state subsidy and ECAP. ASL is a recognized language for the dual language designation, yes. And in fact, we actually had a couple of providers who indicated they use American Sign Language and Infant Sign Language in their programs. Happy to answer additional questions. Don't be shy. Well, while we are waiting, I am going to share our dual language video with you because I'm very excited. We just got it published a couple of days ago. So, in that case, Eric, I believe you are the one sharing screen. Would you share the next slide with next steps for dual language?
Yes, Jess will.
Oh, thank you so much. So our next steps for DCYF's dual language designation is we really want to think about the ongoing award structure and amount. This early adopters phase, we had an amount for was one-time startup funds essentially. And we want to start thinking about what an annual award looks like for dual language designated programs. Again, we want to really be intentional about launching those supports for providers and coaches. And we are looking for partner and provider input to help us make improvements on what we have built thus far. As far as communications, we will be sending out updated award cycles once we know them. And again, looking for that early adopters feedback from providers, coaches, and partners. We have started that process, but I don't want to say that we finished it by any means. There's still a lot of work to do. And then one of the other next steps too is that we want to launch quality review tools so that programs are able to finalize their dual language designation and begin receiving that annual award, which the amount is to be determined. We want to make sure that we work back with our advisory groups, IPAL, all of the folks that y'all saw on the engagement slide. We want to make sure we go back to them and ask them what an annual award amount would look like. That is all I have for you all today. And I finished early. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you do put them in the chat or say them out loud. Thank you.
Did you say that there was a little video? Do you just need to be made a co-host for that?
Oh, I linked it in the chat.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, we can show it if you like, but I don't know if that's how you all want to use 5 minutes of your time. So I'm reading. 5
minutes is totally fine. We're within our time frame.
All right. I wonder if Eric or the person who is sharing screen would be willing to click that link and show the video. And then just make sure to turn the captions on because we do have captions as well.
Oops.
I'm betting Jess can handle that. I don't think I could do that. Give her a quick sec. Thank you, Jess.
And then you just want to make sure that when you shared your screen, you clicked share sound as well.
Para mí es importante que el aprendizaje de mi hija sea en 2 idiomas por 2 razones. La primera es porque quiero que ella no pierda conexión con sus abuelitos, inclusive conmigo. Yo estoy aprendiendo inglés. Obviamente mi idioma natal es el español y quiero que no pierda esa comunicación con sus abuelitos, con sus tíos que viven en México. Los niños deben de estar orgullosos de quién son, de dónde vienen.
Ok. Ofrece a los niños de desarrollar el sentido de pertenencia, de valorarse, de verse ellos mismos como personas importantes, valiosas, que pueden aportar algo a la sociedad y sentir orgullo y querer sentirse conectados con sus raíces, con las familias latinas. Porque Chile, México. Creo que les ayuda a entender que su comunidad, sus raíces son valiosas y comienzan a saber que son importantes. O sea, como dije, a verse ellos mismos como personas valiosas, como soy latino, soy importante, soy valioso, estoy aportando algo, soy alguien que puedo aportar algo a la comunidad, soy único.
One of the things to build their identity is to help them and ensure who they are. And sometimes they don't feel belonging because they don't speak English, but as I welcome them, they open up to learn more and more, and it gets to the point that at the end of the school year, they learn both languages, and that's priceless.
I think that the benefits to teaching the native language is it's bringing the language back to this area and it's helping the kids relate to their culture and enjoy doing what the elders and everyone before them have done as a tribe and as a whole.
Jeunesse in PLC. The impact that I see is that our elders are now hearing these children speak the same language. You know, it dwindled out a little bit. As they got older, they were hearing less and less people around them speak their language. You know, my grandpa had told my oldest son, when I was your age, everybody spoke the language. Now he's in his 80s, and there's a handful of elders. And each year that those number of elders get lower and lower, but our number of children get higher and higher. And so I think that's the impact, is the elders are like, our numbers are increasing in the children.
I get to tell them, you know, question, hey, how are you? I can't wait to see when they're all adults. They won't have to work as hard as we did to learn the language.
And we have non-native children that also get to learn about their friends that they're going to grow up with. They'll understand them through their entire childhood and into adulthood. It's a good foundation that we're setting for the next few generations of language speakers. I think it's a positive impact that the elders are like, we're going to be okay.
Uno de los beneficios que tienen es saber otras culturas, las culturas de otros países y basado en el idioma español. Son esponjas donde ellos absorben los dos idiomas a la misma vez.
Tarde o temprano van a aprender sus hijos inglés, o sea que no se frenen a llevar a sus niños a programas bilingües. Sus hijos van a aprender tarde o temprano inglés, en la escuela lo van a aprender sí o sí.
Hay el mito de que puede confundir a los niños, de que, si mi hijo con trabajo, va a ser un poquito difícil al principio, pero una vez que los niños entiendan y comprendan, no va a haber quien los pare.
Thanks for sharing that video. We still got a few minutes left of my time. If you have any questions for me about anything.
Thanks for sharing. It's just very important information and a great opportunity to have the DLL program.
Yeah, I'm seconding that. There were some perspectives there that I hadn't thought of either with regards to connecting with the elderly community. So I thought that was a really beautiful perspective. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your feedback. I will be looking in the Jamboard. Still got a few minutes, so I'll be here.
Thank you for being here and for sharing as much as you've shared. It's great. We are coming to the end of our meeting. There is a reflection survey that we will wait for Jess to share, and I'll send it over to Katie. But seriously, if you still have questions for, about the dual language for Athena, you're welcome to jump in.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a short but sweet meeting, and I've learned a lot, and some new stuff that came up. So yeah, make sure you do those surveys. They really help out. Our next meeting, I don't even want to say the word, but December 13th will be the end of the year. So December 13th, look forward to some updates, and hopefully we'll get some more speakers on. But other than that, yeah, thank you for taking the time out to listen and be a part of this. We always you know, Julie and I and the support team, it's just, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, do we have the reflection survey? We do need the feedback on all the topics, as well as, you know, if you guys have topics that you'd really like to see come to, oh, there it is. Good. Everybody could take a few minutes to fill that out on all of the things that we've discussed today. That'd be great.
Yeah.
It's in the chat.
And it's, you know, if you do have ideas and departments that you would like to hear from, you know, it can take a couple meetings to get them scheduled and get the people on board. So yeah, let us know as soon as you have an idea or a department or somebody you want to hear from. We're here to help you guys and get that voiced. So, all right, we'll have a great Wednesday. Pretty rainy on the west side, so I would say go outside, but maybe it's better on the east side.
Thank you so much to all of our presenters that came today.
Thank you for the time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for having us.